The story of American military bases in the Philippines began with conflict, not friendship. After the Spanish-American War, the U.S. acquired the Philippines, leading to a brutal struggle for independence. Yet from this conflict, a unique alliance emerged. The U.S. saw the islands as a strategic Pacific outpost, a gateway to Asia. Subic Bay, a deep-water harbor, and Clark Air Base, a vast plain in central Luzon, became the sites of major U.S. military installations. These were not small outposts, but sprawling complexes projecting American power across the Pacific. The bases transformed the local economy, employing thousands of Filipinos and creating new communities. For decades, these bases were like American towns on Philippine soil, providing jobs but also symbolizing foreign influence. This duality, economic benefit versus national pride, became central to debates about their presence. The Philippines provided the location. The U.S. brought military might and economic investment. It was an alliance born of necessity, offering security and opportunity to a young nation, but this relationship would be tested by war, politics, and the evolving sense of Filipino identity. The foundations at Subic and Clark would soon prove essential in the global conflicts ahead. World War II thrust the Philippines onto the front lines, with Clark and Subic as prime Japanese targets. Despite devastating attacks, Filipino and American defenders made the bases symbols of resistance. After the war, the Cold War made the bases even more vital, key to America's strategy against communism in Asia. Clark Air Base became a major hub during the Korean and Vietnam Wars, launching missions and moving troops. Subic Bay served as the 7th Fleet's main port, repairing and resupplying warships. The bases were no longer just about defending the Philippines, they projected U.S. power across the region. Throughout the Cold War, Clark and Subic were the cornerstones of American strategy in the Pacific. They enabled rapid response to crises and symbolized U.S. commitment to regional security. For decades, the hum of jets and the bustle of warships at these bases were the sounds of the Cold War, anchored on Philippine soil. But as the world changed, so did the questions about their future. Over time, a new generation of Filipinos began to see the American bases as symbols of colonialism, not partnership. Nationalism surged, and many questioned the fairness of the basing agreements, which seemed to favor U.S. interests. The presence of foreign troops became a focal point for social and political friction. Disputes over legal jurisdiction and incidents involving U.S. servicemen fueled resentment. Protests grew, with calls for the removal of the bases and concerns about sovereignty and social costs. The slogan, "U.S. Bases Out," became a rallying cry. By the late 1980s, the military bases agreement was set to expire, and negotiations for a new treaty were tense. The Philippine side demanded greater control and compensation, while the U.S. was slow to recognize the depth of nationalist sentiment. The fate of the bases would be decided not in Washington, but in Manila, by lawmakers listening to the call for sovereignty. The stage was set for a political showdown. The future of the alliance hung in the balance. As political debate peaked, nature intervened. In June 1991, Mount Pinatubo erupted near Clark Air Base, unleashing one of the century's most violent volcanic events. Ash and debris buried Clark, collapsing roofs and crippling infrastructure. A typhoon compounded the disaster, turning ash into heavy, destructive mud. The U.S. military organized a massive evacuation, moving thousands to safety. The devastation made rebuilding Clark impractical. With the Cold War over and negotiations stalled, the U.S. saw little reason to invest in reconstruction. The eruption forced the Americans to abandon their largest overseas airbase. Nature had accomplished what decades of protests could not. The debate over Clark was suddenly moot. Attention shifted to Subic Bay, but the future of the U.S. presence was now in serious doubt. The alliance faced an unexpected turning point. With Clark Air Base destroyed, focus turned to Subic Bay. Despite efforts to negotiate a new treaty, the political climate in Manila was fiercely nationalistic. The Philippine Senate debated the issue live on national television, weighing economic benefits against sovereignty. On September 16, 1991, the Senate narrowly rejected the treaty, ending nearly a century of U.S. military presence. The magnificent 12 senators who voted no were hailed as heroes. The US was given until the end of 1992 to leave Subic Bay. The final departure was somber. American flags lowered, Filipino flags raised, and thousands of workers facing unemployment. The vast facilities became ghost towns overnight. For the US, it was the end of an era. For the Philippines, a bold step into an uncertain future. The alliance that had shaped both nations for decades was officially over. The bases, once symbols of power, now stood empty. The Philippines faced the challenge of what to do next. A long chapter in the two nations' history had closed, but new opportunities and new challenges were just beginning. After the US left, the Philippines faced the daunting task of repurposing the massive empty bases. Many feared economic collapse, but the government acted quickly, creating agencies to manage the transition. Subic Bay and Clark were transformed into free port zones, attracting investment and new industries. Subic became a thriving commercial hub, drawing global companies with its world-class port. Clark's runway became an international airport, and the area developed into a center for tourism and manufacturing. The feared economic disaster never materialized. Instead, Central Luzon's economy diversified and grew. The successful conversion became a source of national pride. The Philippines had turned former symbols of foreign power into engines of growth and resilience. With the US military gone and the bases thriving, it seemed the debate was over. The 1990s brought calm and a new, independent foreign policy for the Philippines. But the US departure left a power vacuum in the region. The 7th Fleet had long guaranteed security in the South China Sea. Its absence changed the strategic landscape. China began asserting its territorial claims, occupying disputed reefs and challenging Philippine sovereignty. In 1995, China occupied Mischief Reef, deep within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. The Philippine military, long reliant on US support, found itself unprepared. Vulnerability replaced confidence, and questions arose about the wisdom of evicting a powerful ally. The air of certainty was gone, replaced by anxiety about the future. Regional stability was now in question. The Philippines faced new threats with limited means. The story of the bases was not as finished as many had believed. A new chapter was about to begin. China's assertiveness in the South China Sea escalated through the 2000s and 2010s with artificial islands and military outposts. Filipino fishermen and patrols faced increasing harassment. The strategic balance shifted, and Manila looked again to its old ally. In 1999, the Visiting Forces Agreement allowed US troops to return for joint exercises. American ships made regular port calls to Subic Bay, reviving a familiar presence. The Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement of 2014 let US forces access designated areas within Philippine bases. This arrangement respected Philippine sovereignty while strengthening defense ties. US troops could pre-position equipment and train with Filipino forces. The bases within bases concept echoed the past, but fit new realities. The alliance, once thought ended, had quietly returned, driven by enduring strategic interests. The story had come full circle, with history repeating itself in unexpected ways.